But his most important fan was a young, struggling politician over in Germany. A guy named Adolf Hitler saw Mussolini's March on Rome as the perfect blueprint and modeled his entire Nazi party on Italian fascism.
For years, Mussolini seemed unstoppable. But his own ego, his jealousy, and an absolutely disastrous decision to jump into World War II.
Welcome to History Shots. Today, we're diving into the absolutely wild story of a man who craved power more than anything. A man who completely reshaped Italy and, basically wrote the playbook for a whole generation of dictators in Europe, Benito Mussolini. So, Mussolini's ambition, it was off the charts. He genuinely saw himself as the next Roman emperor, the one who would bring back all the glory of the ancient empire. He even copied their famous hand gestures when he gave speeches. But this incredible story of ambition, it has one of the most brutal endings you can imagine. So how on earth does a man who was, for a time, one of the most powerful leaders in Europe end up like that? Well, to really get it, to understand his spectacular fall, we have to go all the way back to the beginning, back to his pretty rebellious and frankly surprising origins. Yeah, before he was Il Duce, the all-powerful leader, Mussolini was a troubled kid, a failed teacher, and, get this, a super passionate socialist. I mean, the contradiction here is just amazing. As a kid, Mussolini was a notorious bully. He even attacked other children with a knife. But as he got older, this aggressive kid somehow turned into this incredibly charming and magnetic guy. He became obsessed with Karl Marx, so obsessed that when he moved to Switzerland with no money, the only possession he brought with him was a picture of Marx. And with his powerful way of speaking, he quickly became a star propagandist for the socialists. Of course, all his revolutionary talk didn't exactly go over well with the Swiss government. He got arrested over and over again. But that didn't slow him down at all. Actually, it was the opposite. Every arrest was like free publicity, making him more and more famous back home in Italy. And then came the big turning point. When World War I exploded across Europe, Mussolini saw a golden opportunity to get what he really wanted, personal power, even if it meant throwing away everything he'd ever claimed to believe in. And his change of heart was a complete 180. As a socialist editor, he was totally against the war. But then he saw capitalists getting rich from the conflict, and he completely flipped, becoming this fanatical pro-war nationalist. His old socialist buddies were absolutely furious. They kicked him out of the party for good, and from that moment on, the ideology he once championed became his #1 enemy. So, with his old beliefs in the trash, he cooked up something brand new: fascism. The name itself comes from the ancient Roman fasces. That bundle of wooden rods tied around an axe. For Mussolini, it was the perfect symbol. It stood for collective power, a group of fighters who could bring about a revolution by any means necessary. Okay, so now he's got this new ideology, he's got the backing of wealthy war profiteers, and he sets his sights on taking over Italy itself. And his main tool? Chaos. Just look at how fast this all happens. 1919, he starts the party. By 1920, his violent goon squad, the Blackshirts, are burning down union halls and killing socialists, basically controlling huge parts of the country while the government just stands by and watches. Only 2 years later, he threatens to march his army into the capital, and the king, terrified of a civil war, just hands him the keys to the government. By 1924, it's game over. He rigs the elections and makes himself dictator for life. So now he's in charge and he gets to work building his new Roman Empire. And the truly crazy part is that, for a while, the rest of the world was actually cheering him on. His first move, naturally, was to crush anyone who might oppose him. He banned newspapers that criticized him, outlawed unions, and tossed his political enemies into jail. But he was also politically savvy. He won over the Pope by officially recognizing Vatican City as its own country. So to a lot of outsiders,
It looked like he was bringing some much-needed order to a chaotic Italy. And the international praise just started pouring in. Winston Churchill, who would, of course, later become his biggest foe, at first called him the greatest living jurist because he saw him as a bulwark against communism.
The Catholic Church gave him the ultimate seal of approval. Pope Pius XI actually said Mussolini was a man sent by Providence. Basically, a gift from God. But his most important fan was a young, struggling politician over in Germany. A guy named Adolf Hitler saw Mussolini's March on Rome as the perfect blueprint and modeled his entire Nazi party on Italian fascism.
For years, Mussolini seemed unstoppable. But his own ego, his jealousy, and an absolutely disastrous decision to jump into World War II would be the beginning of the end.
You see, as Hitler was just steamrolling through Poland and France, Mussolini got jealous. He couldn't stand the thought of his German apprentice stealing the spotlight. So in 1940, he launched his own invasion of Greece, thinking it would be a piece of cake. Instead, the tiny Greek army fought back like lions and completely humiliated the Italians, pushing them all the way back into Albania. And here's the best part, the real irony. After getting his army crushed, Mussolini had to go hat in hand and beg for help from the very same guy he had privately called a crazy little clown. Hitler lectured him, then bailed him out, but the myth of Mussolini's military genius was shattered for good. By 1943, the party was well and truly over. The Allies invaded Sicily, and Mussolini's own fascist Grand Council, desperate to save Italy from total destruction, voted to kick him out of power. The dictator had been overthrown by his own men. And this is what kicks off the final, chaotic, desperate chapter of his life. A last-ditch attempt to hold on to power that ends in the most gruesome way you can imagine. I mean, look at this chain of events. He's arrested by the king, then he's broken out of a mountaintop prison by German commandos in this crazy, daring raid. Hitler props him up as a puppet leader, but by 1945, with Germany collapsing, Mussolini knows the jig is up. He throws on a German soldier's uniform and tries to escape to Switzerland with his mistress, but he's spotted and captured by the very same socialists he used to terrorize. Their justice was swift. And this brings us right back to where we started. They took his body to Milan, the city where fascism was born, in the exact same public square where he had dumped the bodies of his enemies just months before. His own body and his mistress's were strung up by the feet for a furious crowd to stone and spit on. A truly brutal, symbolic end. Now, while fascism is obviously condemned around the world, in Italy, Mussolini's legacy is, well, it's complicated. Some people still see him as a strong leader who made the trains run on time. His tomb is still a pilgrimage site for neo-fascists. And in a really strange twist of history, his own granddaughter has even served as a member of the European Parliament. So the whole story leaves us with this big question. Was he just a power-hungry tyrant who played a dangerous game and lost spectacularly? Or was he some kind of genuine revolutionary, however twisted, whose grand vision for a new Roman Empire just completely fell apart? It's something to think about.